Spokesman at the moment for a campaign group called No CCTV, and so I do media interviews, mainly BBC Radio and the odd bit of TV news when they've got topical stories up about CCTV locally. There's another group that campaigns against surveillance called Big Brother Watch. They've got a lot more money than we have, so they get a lot more media coverage. And what got me started on the subject and researching it and campaigning against it was something that happened in Birmingham in my neighbourhood 2 years ago now, and it was a bit of a wake-up call because something very strange happened. Hundreds of cameras were suddenly installed in residential neighbourhoods for seemingly no apparent reason. These were in quiet suburban side streets, leafy residential areas, areas where people live, not town centres, not areas where all the shops and the pubs are. They weren't traffic cameras or there didn't seem to be any reason for them to be there. It struck me as odd, and we were told that, oh, it's a Home Office grant that's paid for them. But there were hundreds of them. They were in seemingly random places, and there was definitely something very strange about it, and I felt that it was a case of sort of Big Brother, you know, the central government basically spying on people, and that's what I found to be the case. These cameras were now coming in from the areas where the shops and pubs are, right up to your doorstep, so in the areas where you live, and all around the side streets, the residential streets, hundreds of them. So this struck me as odd and worrying. And what I discovered was that it was basically a covert surveillance operation designed by ACPO, the Association of Chief Police Officers, to monitor 90,000 people in Birmingham who happened to live in two areas that were deemed to be mainly Asian or Muslim residents living there. Following the logic that if you're Asian or Muslim, you could be Al-Qaeda. So that's basically the sort of foundation of the scheme and where the thinking came from. Nobody was told about it, there was no consultation, and when people started to ask what are these cameras about, we were told, oh, it's for community safety, it's to stop antisocial behaviour and catch people who haven't taxed or insured their car and things like that. But I quickly discovered that there was actually £3.5 million from the Home Office and been given to ACPO specifically for counter-terrorism, and that they basically ring-fenced Allen Rock and Washwood Heath to the north, and Sparkbrook and Balsall Heath skirting through Moseley to the southeast of the city. There were 108 ANPR cameras, that's automatic number plate recognition cameras, which scan, record and log all vehicle movements. There were only 36 CCTV cameras in the whole scheme, but there were 72 cameras which were covert, so they were hidden in secret locations and nobody knew where those locations were. But we were told that it did include an element of covert cameras. So this was certainly something out of the ordinary, and it was not the usual thing that you might have become accustomed to. And there were a lot of people locally who felt this was really wrong, that there was, this was really overstepped a boundary, become so extreme that it was a grave infringement of civil liberties. Now, if the police have got information about genuine suspects, then they should investigate those suspects, and they've already got powers to put people under surveillance, whether it's their emails, their phone calls, whatever they need, they can already do. But what they did is they decided that if you live in a certain part of town, then you were a suspect, and all your vehicle movements were going to be recorded in a vehicle movement net and logged on the database. And inferences and conclusions were going to be drawn from that data as to whether you might be suspicious. So basically I blew the whistle. I got one of the Guardian's top reporters on the job, and he did a fantastic job. It was going to be front page of the Guardian. This isn't me. This is just a blog piece I wrote for the Guardian after it had all been exposed. But it would have been front page, but for an attack on the flotilla to Gaza, which bumped it onto the inside pages. But it was a sort of double-page spread, and it was a big story. So once it broke in the Guardian, it was massive news, and it was in every newspaper, every national, and then it just went international. And the police and the council had a massive crisis on their hands. So before they'd even finished installing the cameras, there was a massive public uproar, and the camera crews, the radio, were at these meetings, and the Safer Birmingham partners, who were ostensibly behind it, but really they were used to sort of policy launder what was really going on. It wasn't really to do with community safety at all. They just stuck their badge, just took off the counter-terrorism badges, stuck the Safer Birmingham Partnership badges on, and claimed it was about something else, and thought that nobody would be any the wiser. But obviously they weren't counting on me sticking my nose in and kicking up a massive stink. So I'm going to skim over this because there's a lot more to cover, because I've covered this before. But the upshot of it was a massive media campaign. It was huge embarrassment for West Midlands Police and for the council. And there were daily Home Office briefings, there were crisis meetings at West Midlands Police. The council was blaming the police. The Safer Birmingham Partnership were, everyone was blaming each other, and there were two reports that came out, one by the police and one by the council, totally critical of the scheme, saying what a massive disaster, what a fiasco, it's all gone horribly wrong. But yeah, they would have got away with it, as they say in Scooby-Doo, if it hadn't been for those pesky kids. And the upshot, as you probably already know, was that all the cameras got taken down. And that's, you don't often hear the police apologise. It's very rare, and it's very rare that you'll hear a chief constable apologise to the nation on live TV. But that's what happened on this occasion, so that was a first. And it was a historic victory for civil liberties. And although a lot of people didn't agree with what I'd done, they probably thought, well, they are these brown people, they could be terrorists, and you can't be too careful, can you? And the authorities must know what they're doing. So a lot of people didn't agree with what I'd done. However, I was, quite sort of, it was nice to be shortlisted for an award, a Human Rights Award by Liberty in 2010, which kind of reassured me that I had done the right thing. But as a result of what I did, I've probably got a police intelligence file, and I may be on the list of domestic extremists. I don't really want to write to them to find out. This is what one of the councillors said, referring to the Orwellian nature of it. He said, the vision that George Orwell had of the sort of world where these cameras exist could not possibly have contemplated the incompetence of West Midlands Police and the Safer Birmingham Partnership. The ludicrously named Project Champion has turned into Project Catastrophe. And that really sort of sums up, in a nutshell, what happened. I mean, there's a lot of detail to it, and maybe if you've got any questions, perhaps you could ask me at the end, because I'm sure there'll be a lot to talk about. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a clip, Channel 4 News, which kind of sums up what happened, and hopefully can get it across more succinctly than I can. So if you bear with me while I fiddle, because I haven't been able to embed these media clips in to PowerPoint, because I'm really not that au fait with this kind of stuff. So this should come up, and this is Channel 4 News.
The Chief Constable of West Midlands Police has had to apologise over his force's handling of a controversial CCTV project in Birmingham. A report found consultation with local residents over the project had been too little, too late. Well, our Midlands correspondent, Darshna Soni, is in Birmingham now. Darshna, what exactly has he had to say sorry for?
Well, this project cost over £3 million, Carl, but tonight all of the cameras have been covered over with bags and there's big signs up saying the cameras are not in use to try and reassure the local community that they really aren't being spied upon. Now, it's a rare apology and the Chief Constable had to issue it because a few months ago these cameras started appearing in two mainly Muslim areas of Birmingham without any consultation, and initially residents were told that they were there to fight things like antisocial behaviour and crime, but in fact they were there because the police had applied for a pot of money from a counter-terrorist fund, and actually it was there for the counter-terrorist regional office here to really monitor residents going in and out of these two Muslim communities, and it caused huge controversy, and today the Chief Constable had to issue a very rare public apology.
I'm sorry that we got such an important issue so wrong, and deeply sorry that in doing so we've had such a negative impact on our communities.
Darshna, why did he say they'd put the cameras up in the first place?
Well, the project was conceived back in...
The Chief Constable of West Midlands Police has had to apologise over his force's handling of a controversial CCTV project in Birmingham. A report found consultation with local residents over the project had been too little, too late. Well, our Midlands correspondent, Darshna Soni, is in Birmingham now. Darshna, what exactly has he had to say sorry for?
Well, this project cost over £3 million, Carl, but tonight all of the cameras have been covered over with bags and there's big signs up saying the cameras are not in use to try and reassure the local community that they really aren't being spied upon. Now, it's a rare apology and the Chief Constable had to issue it because a few months ago these cameras started appearing in two mainly Muslim areas of Birmingham without any consultation, and initially residents were told that they were there to fight things like antisocial behaviour and crime, but in fact they were there because the police had applied for a pot of money from a counter-terrorist fund, and actually it was there for the counter-terrorist regional office here to really monitor residents going in and out of these two Muslim communities, and it caused huge controversy, and today the Chief Constable had to issue a very rare public apology.
I'm sorry that we got such an important issue so wrong, and deeply sorry that in doing so we've had such a negative impact on our communities.
Darshna, why did he say they'd put the cameras up in the first place?
Well, the project was conceived back in 2007, and you may remember that at that time there were a number of high-profile terror plots that had been foiled and a number of arrests in these specific areas of Birmingham. And I understand that counter-terrorist officers privately were concerned about their ability to monitor these communities, and they had private concerns, and so they came up with this idea. They would effectively put cameras surrounding these two areas so that they could monitor exactly who went in and out of these areas at all times. There weren't just CCTV cameras, but also automatic number plate recognition systems so that they could monitor cars going in and out. So 90,000 residents would have been surveyed every single day, 24 hours a day. Now, I spoke to some campaigners who were against these cameras, and I put it to them that didn't they understand there was a terrorist threat at the time and the police had to respond in some way? This is what campaigners told me today.
I think they should concentrate on investigating the suspects. And what they've done here is they've made everyone a suspect. They've said if you live in this area, then you're a suspect. Because the whole area is covered in a permanent surveillance network of these cameras. And that's a dramatic change in policing in this country, and it's a worrying development for civil liberties and human rights, and I think they've admitted that.
So campaigners there saying tonight that they feel vindicated, although there is one thing, there's still no word from the police when they'll actually be taken down.
Darshna Soni in Birmingham.
She said, Thank you. She said when they'll be taken down. That was a turning point in the campaign. There were several turning points, and that was definitely one of them, because she said there's no word as to when they'll be taken down. So she had decided that she thought they definitely were going to be taken down. And everyone said to me, you're wasting your time there, you've got no chance, you can't take on the police and the government, it's national security, terrorism, what can you do? You might as well forget it, mate. So I said, well, I'm going to have a go, watch me. And, sorry, just trying to get back to the slideshows. There might be a bit of fiddling around. Oh, this is going to happen every time, isn't it? That's going to be... I'll have to minimise it or something. Okay. So I did about 30 or 40 interviews throughout that campaign. It was about 8 months. It went on. I just wouldn't let it lie. So the police were just desperate for the story to die in the media, so they could just carry on with it. But I wouldn't let it lie. So we just went around the world. It was on. We had camera crews from Japan, Canada. We had Al Jazeera, Press TV, Russia Today. All these people, BBC, ITV, Channel 4, all the national newspapers. It was all over the place, and it was a big international story. And that's why they came down, because it was the spotlight, the scrutiny was on Birmingham. And as time went on, nobody was willing to defend the scheme, and everybody decided that, you know, it should just be got rid of. It was just a huge disaster. And it got me thinking, because I did loads of interviews, and I thought, well, I better know what I'm talking about, otherwise I'm just going to look like an idiot. So I did loads of research, and what I discovered really quite shocked me, and you know, I learned a lot, and I'm still learning now, because I'm still sort of researching this subject. And this is what somebody said about the power of the state and terrorism. There is no surveillance power too intrusive or unaccountable for our political class, provided the word terrorism is invoked to justify those powers. And because people would say, well, it's national security, it's terrorism, you know, these things are necessary. There must have been a reason for it, they must know what they're doing. And there was this discrepancy. People thought, well, okay, this is unique, this is different, this has never been done before. But generally, nothing wrong with surveillance cameras, surely they're a good thing. And I wondered whether that was the case, so I started to look into that as well. I mean, putting a ring of steel of vehicle tracking cameras around particular neighbourhoods, they wouldn't just do that everywhere as standard, would they? Let's go to the sleepy Hertfordshire market town of Royston in Cambridgeshire, where they explain that they've just done the same thing. So if you bear with me my fiddle. This is ITV East Anglia.
7 number plate recognition cameras will be installed on roads going into Royston and will alert police if a vehicle is uninsured, untaxed or suspected of involvement in crime.
Well, police say the cameras are an important crime-fighting weapon, but some civil rights groups say they're an invasion of our privacy and they want the law tightened up as well. Martin Stew's in Royston for us this evening. Martin, tell us more. Well, Royston's a relatively small town with about 15,000 people, and it's got a relatively low crime rate, but the police are hoping to bring that lower with the help of these. These are automatic number plate recognition cameras. There are 3 up so far. Soon there'll be 1 on every road coming into the town, creating a so-called ring of steel. Every car that enters Royston will be filmed, every number plate scanned, and every detail logged on a database. This is ANPR, Automatic Number Plate Recognition, funded by the District Council and local businesses, and run by the police. The big question is this a Big Brother-style invasion of our privacy? Or is it simply the most practical way to police our streets, that the innocent have nothing to fear? The system has been used in mobile patrols for years. Hertfordshire Police says it helps crack down on uninsured drivers and track more serious criminals, like 4 men who were charged this week with attempted burglary.
Even locally within the county, we have thousands of cases where it's proven and helped us to arrest burglars, drug dealers, fraudsters, robbers, and indeed has helped us take uninsured and unsafe drivers off the road.
Those found guilty will go onto the police's database for 5 years. Those who are innocent will also go on the database, but for 2 years.
We're not criminals. Why should we be photographed and have our data kept on a national database? We're not criminals. It shouldn't happen. We should have a system like the Canadians have, where if the driver's not wanted and the car's not known to the police, then it just falls off the system. That's what we should have.
I do think it probably could be an invasion of privacy. I don't particularly want to know people know my movements 24/7.
I think it's a good idea. If you've got nothing to hide, then you've got nothing to fear. So I imagine that for the majority of the people, it would cause no problem at all.
I think the Big Brother issue is quite common now. I think there's no way around it. There's always somebody watching. I don't care what you say, you know. I think that's a thing of the past now. I think people accept that for what it is.
The police say 91% of Royston residents are in favour, but as the cameras watch us, the civil rights groups are asking, who's watching them?
Martin, do you think we're going to be seeing more of these cameras around the region?
Well, yes, Becky, whether you love them or loathe them, the likelihood is, yes, that's the case. And we contacted all our police forces today and tried to get numbers from them. We found out that in Hertfordshire there are already 7 of these fixed cameras. In Northamptonshire there are 57, in Bedfordshire 61, and in Suffolk there are 9. That number is likely to increase. But the real important thing here is legislation. At the moment, the police are governed by ACPO, which is their watchdog, who lay very strict guidelines as to what they can do with that data. But the police...
Actually, ACPO is a private company that designs and implements policing policy. It's totally unaccountable. It doesn't report to government. Maybe the odd select committee that go and tell them what they're up to. But they've got a free hand. If you ask questions in Parliament, as some MPs have, about the use of ANPR cameras by the police, the answer you'll get is that would be an operational matter for the police. So they'd be just given a free hand to do whatever they see fit. And ACPO is a private company, basically made up of the chief constables, the top brass of the police, and their overriding impulse is more power and more intrusion, more surveillance, and they're not really concerned about the rights of innocent people, because everyone is potential criminal. So if we treat everyone like a criminal, you catch more of them. That's sort of how they seem to operate. Now, sorry about the fiddling around.
7 number plate recognition cameras will be installed on roads going into Royston and will alert police if a vehicle is uninsured, untaxed or suspected of involvement in crime.
Well, police say the cameras are an important crime-fighting weapon, but some civil rights groups say they're an invasion of our privacy and they want the law tightened up as well. Martin Stew's in Royston for us this evening. Martin, tell us more.
Well, Royston's a relatively small town with about 15,000 people, and it's got a relatively low crime rate, but the police are hoping to bring that lower with the help of these. These are automatic number plate recognition cameras. There are 3 up so far. Soon there'll be 1 on every road coming into the town, creating a so-called ring of steel. Every car that enters Royston will be filmed, every number plate scanned, and every detail logged on a database. This is ANPR, Automatic Number Plate Recognition, funded by the District Council and local businesses, and run by the police. The big question is this a Big Brother-style invasion of our privacy, or is it simply the most practical way to police our streets, that the innocent have nothing to fear? The system has been used in mobile patrols for years. Hertfordshire Police says it helps crack down on uninsured drivers and track more serious criminals, like 4 men who were charged this week with attempted burglary.
Even locally within the county, we have thousands of cases where it's proven and helped us to arrest burglars, drug dealers, fraudsters, robbers, and indeed has helped us take uninsured and unsafe drivers off the road.
Those found guilty will go onto the police's database for 5 years. Those who are innocent will also go on the database, but for 2 years.
We're not criminals. Why should we be photographed and have our data kept on a national database? We're not criminals. It shouldn't happen. We should have a system like the Canadians have, where if the driver's not wanted and the car's not known to the police, then this just falls off the system. That's what we should have.
I do think it probably could be an invasion of privacy. I don't particularly want to know people knowing my movements 24/7.
I think it's a good idea. If you've got nothing to hide, then you've got nothing to fear. So I imagine that for the majority of the people, it would cause no problem at all.
I think the Big Brother issue is quite common now. I think there's no way around it. There's always somebody watching. I don't care what you say, you know. I think that's a thing of the past now. I think people accept that for what it is.
The police say 91% of Royston residents are in favour, but as the cameras watch us, civil rights groups are asking, who's watching them?
Martin, do you think we're going to be seeing more of these cameras around the region?
Well, yes, Becky, whether you love them or loathe them, the likelihood is, yes, that's the case. We contacted all our police forces today and tried to get numbers from them. We found out that in Hertfordshire there are already 7 of these fixed cameras. In Northamptonshire there are 57, in Bedfordshire 61, and in Suffolk there are 9. That number is likely to increase. But the real important thing here is legislation. At the moment, the police are governed by ACPO, which is their watchdog, who lay very strict guidelines as to what they can do with that data. But the police are now talking with a Home Office about getting a law put onto statute as what you can do with this data, whether it's allowed to stay there for 2 years, and for exactly what purposes it can be used. This is an issue which is going to get bigger and more controversial.
Actually, ACPO is a private company that designs and implements policing policy. It's totally unaccountable. It doesn't report to government. Maybe the odd select committee that go and tell them what they're up to, but they've got a free hand. If you ask questions in Parliament, as some MPs have, about the use of ANPR cameras by the police, the answer you'll get is that would be an operational matter for the police. So they'd be just given a free hand to do whatever they see fit. And ACPO is a private company, basically made up of the chief constables, the top brass of the police, and their overriding impulse is more power and more intrusion, more surveillance, and they're not really concerned about the rights of innocent people, because everyone is a potential criminal. So if we treat everyone like a criminal, you catch more of them. That's sort of how they seem to operate. Now, sorry about the fiddling around. So what these ANPR cameras are automated checkpoints. They're vehicle checkpoints. So if you had to pull up and there was a policeman or even a soldier with a gun, but somebody saying, papers please, you show your papers, they get on the phone, check you out. That's essentially what's happening, but we don't notice it because it's being done automatically as we drive past. There are over 10,000 of these ANPR cameras in the UK, and the network is spreading. They're on motorways, petrol stations, but the police have decided that they don't want to tell anyone where they are. So they say, well, we don't want to reveal their locations because that might affect their effectiveness. So they cite national security as why they aren't going to tell us where they put these cameras. So they want them basically on every road, every petrol station. They want to track everyone's movements all the time because we're all potential criminals. So I thought, well, that's a bit worrying. And just started to wonder how far is it going to go? You know, how many cameras is enough cameras? How much is too much? And where would you draw the line? Now, one of the key things with all of this information is that there's a huge gulf of disparity between what the public thinks about CCTV and what the truth is. Because everyone thinks, well, it must catch criminals, it must reduce crime, it must deter people from committing crime. And when people do commit crime, they get caught, don't they? They're caught on CCTV. We see it all the time on the telly, we see what Crime Watch, you know, everyone knows that it catches them. That's what everyone thinks. But let's look at some of the research. You know, if cameras do stop crime, okay, maybe it's really intrusive, they're invading our privacy, but if they do catch criminals, maybe it's a price worth paying if it ultimately protects us. But does it? That's the important question. I've got to thank Charles Farrier from No CCTV for unearthing this research. It's all there if you go and look for it, but it won't be brought to your attention. So there's been loads of studies over the last 15 years. Let's just look at some of them and see what they say, just to give an impression, a flavour of whether CCTV has any effect on crime or not. University of Wales Violence Research Group, 1999, found this study provides no evidence of a deterrent effect. Local Government Studies 1999 said CCTV may actually undermine the natural surveillance in towns and communities. The result may be a further spiral of social fragmentation and atomisation, which leads to more alienation and even more crime. Home Office Study 252. CCTV had no effect on violent crimes from 5 studies. Cambridge Evaluation 2007. Consistent with prior research and showing no significant desirable effect of CCTV on crime in city centres. London Assembly 2007 produced a breakdown of all the London boroughs, the number of cameras in each, to the crime clear-up rate. They found no correlation between the number of cameras and how many crimes were solved. In fact, 4 out of 5 boroughs that had the most cameras had a clear-up rate well below average. This is the biggest, probably the most important one that's ever been done. It's part funded by the National Policing Improvement Agency. This was an Uber study. This was a meta-analysis of 44 different studies. They really want to get to the heart of what effect does CCTV have on crime. We've really got to produce some evidence definitively, once and for all. And it concluded, CCTV schemes in city and town centres and public housing did not have a significant effect on crime. There's more. Home Office Study 292 in 2005. It would be easy to conclude from the information presented in this report that CCTV is not effective. The majority of the schemes evaluated did not reduce crime. And even where there was a reduction, this was mostly not due to CCTV. Nor did CCTV schemes make people feel safer, much less change their behaviour. Now, the Home Office is starting to get annoyed now. We're doing all this research and it's just not giving us the results we want. So they added an extra line to that concluding remarks. That, however, would be too simplistic a conclusion. So, what is the point of doing research if you're going to ignore its conclusions? Undeterred, the government has pressed on. We now have a national CCTV strategy. In it, the police state that anecdotal evidence suggests that over 80% of the CCTV footage supplied to the police is far from ideal, especially if it is being used for primary identification, or identities are unknown and the identification is being sought, for instance, by media release. So if they've got no idea who committed the crime, but they've got a picture of someone's face, often they'll do this wanted poster thing where they'll release the images to the media and say, somebody must know this guy, dob him in. So they're saying, even for that purpose, it's pretty much useless, or it's not very good. 80% of it, far from ideal. However, they're recommending that they continue to promote CCTV and its expansion, despite the fact that they know it doesn't work, which is a bit puzzling, by forming evidence-based business cases. So they're saying the research that we've had commissioned and all the research that's been done isn't giving us the results we want. It says CCTV is crap. It doesn't help with crime at all. So we'll start saying it does, and we'll start promoting that. And it's essentially what is contained within the strategy. Okay, you might think, well, that's 2007, that's a few years ago. So let's bring us up to date with the Protection of Freedoms Act, 2012, which contains a code of practice for surveillance cameras. This is meant to cover CCTV and ANPR. They only tucked ANPR in as a result of Project Champion and that fiasco, because there were a lot of concerns about the number plate tracking. And this is the Home Secretary delighting in the advancements in technology that are going to be used to keep us under surveillance. Modern digital technology is on the cusp of revolutionising the use of CCTV. Affordable high-resolution systems with powerful zoom potential, small discrete cameras, 360-degree vision, wireless and internet networks facilitating mobility and cheap installation, and effective video analytics software, for example, facial recognition, are coming closer to being an established part of the CCTV landscape.
Did he spot Theresa May giving her husband porn at our expense by any chance?
Yeah. And the reason I know this is because I was invited down to give evidence to the Protection of Freedoms Bill Committee while they were scrutinising the bill. And I think they did this because I think what they were hoping would happen was that I would go down there and they'd say, oh, what happened in Birmingham was terrible. Yeah, it was a big cock up. If they'd have consulted people first and everyone agreed, it would be fine. But that's not really what I said. I think they were quite surprised, and I'll show you in a minute. But one of the key things in the Protection of Freedoms Act is getting people to love it, basically. Our approach is intended to provide a means through which public confidence in CCTV, ANPR, and other such systems is improved. So it's about improving public confidence, getting people to support it. We don't intend anything to hamper the ability of law enforcement agencies or any other organisation to use such technology. There's nothing in this bill that's going to say you can't use cameras. That's essentially what she's saying. Cameras, we'll have more of them. For any purpose, by anyone, law enforcement or any other organisation. As long as we say it's for a good reason, and we're being honest about it. So, as long as it's reasonable, justifiable and transparent. And with this parliamentary language, you've really got to read between the lines, because it all sounds lovely, it always does, but you've got to really kind of get a feel for what they're actually trying to say. But again, citizens feel able to support the security measures that are in place. So it's about packaging it and selling it to us in a nice way. But it actually does the opposite of what it claims to do, this bill, this act. It doesn't protect freedoms, it doesn't protect our freedom, there's nothing in there about protecting you from surveillance, tracking, monitoring, filming, recording, databasing. That's not what it's about. I guess they're saying we're protecting you by giving you more surveillance. And I'm just going to show you, there's 3 short clips here. It's about a 20-minute thing, so I've had to take some edited highlights. And I'm going to have to do the jiggery-pokery with the with that. Oh, just before I didn't mention when it showed the Royston ring of steel, that the reason that was on. Don't. I think that the Code of Practice is really an enabling act, which enables the proliferation and expansion of the use of surveillance cameras. It's concerned mainly with technical standards to do with compatibility and networking of systems, and as described in the code, it's designed to be an A to Z manual of how to get the most out of your camera systems. It doesn't appear to have anything to do with protecting the rights of the individual. There's nothing in there about protection from surveillance. Okay, so here's an article I wrote about giving evidence to Parliament and about the fact that I was trying to tell them that the bill doesn't do what it claims to do, and that while everybody, we're reading stories in the media where people are quoted as saying, yes, it's a welcome step in the right direction. Well, actually, in many ways, it's not, particularly on the CCTV camera side of things. It basically says full steam ahead, nothing will hinder or hamper the ability of anyone to use technology. More of it, please, more extreme, bring it on. Which doesn't really, to me, equate with freedom. So by now, I'm not really trusting our policymakers and lawmakers, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not really sure they're up to anything that's for our benefit. So you've really got to find out what these people are doing. What normally happens, there was another Royston clip with the BBC version where it ended with the words, the cameras are due to be installed next week, and then the residents of Royston can decide whether they think it's a welcome improvement or it's a big brother state. And I thought, oh, okay, I see how it works. You install the cameras and then let people decide whether to like it or lump it. And usually that is the process. There isn't usually a consultation. We don't ask people. The reason we don't ask people is because it's assumed that everyone's in favour because of this popular support, this consent that's widely assumed to exist, and that therefore everybody loves cameras and everyone will be in favour of it surely. So there's no need to ask them. So you've really got to find out what these people are up to. The police, the council, the various shadowy partnerships that they use to launder policy through. Business improvement districts are a new one. They're really keen on putting cameras up everywhere. And you don't wait till after they've been installed. And if you find that your local councillor or any of these people have got a plan to put cameras up, it'd be a good idea to ask them for what reason and what purpose. Get them to prove the need for surveillance cameras and get them to prove that they actually do anything about crime. And they won't be able to. I did this in Moseley. Nothing to do with the Project Champion scheme. This was an entirely separate scheme that a local councillor came up with almost immediately afterwards. He felt that it would be an improvement to put cameras all along Moseley Village. And when I asked about other similar schemes like Balsall Heath or King's Heath and what effect it had on crime in the area, they couldn't answer. I said, well, why can't you tell us? They said, well, we don't know. I said, why don't you know? They said, we don't measure it. So they say, trust us, believe us, it does work, it will reduce crime, but then they don't measure it, so of course they can't prove it. And they don't measure it because they know, they've already done 15 years worth of studies, it doesn't work. So, you know, find out what they're planning. I thought I'll have a look at Birmingham City Council, see what they are planning. They've got a public space CCTV strategy, written in 2008. And it says the potential to expand this CCTV technology to include facial recognition systems is already well advanced. It is suggested that it will be available for use with CCTV cameras within the next 2 years. So their dream is a bit behind. It's running a bit late because no one's really perfected facial recognition yet. It's used in limited applications where, like airports. So it will compare your face to your passport photograph and do a match, but they haven't quite perfected it for use. It's just a piece of software, so the camera just gets plugged into it. So all these cameras, which are around everywhere, just need to have a cable plugged in, and they can become facial recognition cameras. I don't know if many of you read Orwell's 1984, the dystopian vision of a totalitarian society controlled by brainwashing and surveillance, I guess. Now, Orwell talks about face crime. You know, if your expressions could be detected, and if they displeased the higher order, the state, the powers that be, then you could be punished. And this is just a little quote from the book about what face crime is. But I'm not suggesting that we're going to be punished for having incorrect facial expressions. But the point of Orwell's novel was to take the direction of travel that we're currently on and follow it to its logical conclusions. How far can it go? And that's one of the questions that worries me. How far will we let it go?
The TSA in American airports were given 22 facial things, weren't they? So if you yawn in the queue, you're suspicious.
Well, there you go. Maybe maybe we do already have face crime.
Some blue sky thinker went, I've read this, I know the answer.
Well, this is the thing with software that's developed to analyse behaviour and identify suspicious behaviour. Computer says no, you're in trouble.
So much for the burning championships then.
They could be in trouble as well.
Make every day colour carbon day.
I do wonder whether 1984 is still on the national curriculum, or whether it's sort of dropped off, because it's relevant. It's more relevant today than it ever was.
I think it was hard to get on Kindle or one of the digitised books.
This is a Transport for London poster, a public information poster. It looks as though it's come straight out of Orwell's 1984. That's meant to make you feel reassured and safe. Yep. You're safe beneath the watchful eyes.
What about the 4 aliens?
What the officer only one?
So, how safe do you want to be? You feel safe yet? Do you need a few more cameras? It's a great image, I think. You know, it's like we're told that the cameras are meant to make us feel safer, but they don't really do that. I would suggest that they do the opposite. And studies have been done when people say, "Oh, I would feel safer with CCTV," yeah, because I wouldn't worry so much about getting mugged or whatever. And then they've done studies like this where they've come back to these people and said, "Right, okay, it's 6 months later or a year later. The cameras have been there for a while. Do you feel safer because of them?" And they say, "Not really, no." They thought they would, but it doesn't really have that effect. But we're told that it will. It will make you feel safer. Now this is sort of jumping around a little bit here, but this is about privacy rather than safety. This clip here.
You disappeared from that screen at precisely 1 p.m.
Ah, yes. That's when I bent down to tie up my shoelace. But after I popped up again, I served another customer. You probably didn't notice. You were probably having another look at Miss Brahms adjusting her cotton wool, I expect.
What was that?
Nothing.
That's voyeurism, that is.
What were you doing, dear?
It was private. Well, it was private.
I feel I must agree with Mr. Rumbold that there has been far too much laxity of late.
Well, I'm glad you agree, Captain Peacock. You were observed to pat Miss Brahms's nether regions shortly after the story.
Yes, I meant to complain about that.
You may be lucky tomorrow.
Nevertheless, I do feel that this is an invasion of one's privacy.
That's exactly what I thought at the time.
It all smacks very much of George Orwell.
Are you trying to say someone else did it?
I'm trying to say, sir, that the use of cameras has an adverse effect on the running of the departments. One tends to become camera conscious.
Well, you're just going to have to get used to it, because I shall be watching you.
Okay, so yeah, that was the 70s, when the idea of having a camera in a shop where you worked was new and worrying. Because one of the things CCTV does is it encourages this walk-on-by society where, if something's happening there, there's a witness over there thinking, "Oh, should I do something? Should I do something?" Cameras there. People abdicate responsibility to the system, to the cameras. And often the police say this. The police say, "Well, the star witness walked off because she just assumed that it'd all be on camera. Now we don't know where she's gone." So people are more concerned with filming everything than actually doing anything about the problems. As long as you film it happening, that seems to be the main thing. Getting it on film, not doing something about it. And a bit like the 70s sitcom, this is the older generation have got a different idea of how to be involved in their community and the people around them. People these days are more likely to just whip out their iPhone and start filming something rather than doing something about it. And here's another clip that shows that old ladies with handbags are more effective at fighting crime than CCTV. And this, I would say, conclusively proves that. There's not a lot of sound, but watch the woman in the red coat. This is a jewellery shop burglary.
She was in England one day, test team, 6 weeks after. She's in pursuit.
She's seen these jewel robbers, and she's just started whacking them with a handbag. She's got
filming her doing it.
Now they've actually caught one. He's off his bottom. Now they've got him now, but everyone else was just standing around like that, filming it. And interestingly, I heard that story referred to on the BBC World Service, and they said, and the whole incident was caught on CCTV. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't at all. That footage, and none of the other footage that's on YouTube, was CCTV footage. It was filmed by people standing around with iPhones. But if the BBC says CCTV solved the crime, then they must be right, surely. Okay. How do I get this back?
Shift F5 from the screen on right now.
Oh, dude, can I have your number? I just turn it off. Just panic.
Hey!
Oh, this is brilliant.
Good man.
That's not even...
Insulting.
Put him on hold next time for 15 minutes and play some music.
Okay, so it seems the emphasis, the focus seems to be more on filming the crime than stopping it. And even the police are at it. The police are at it now. If anything happens, they will rush round quick as a flash and film the crime. They will film as much crime as possible.
Serving the community with a pine.
Yeah, the important thing is that they get that crime on film. That's the important thing. Because, I mean, whether that's parked up and just filming, or whether that's called to a scene, the police are going to be there. Surely they should be doing something about it. No, we're only here to film. The main thing is that they get it on film.
We should put the old lady in there.
Open the doors.
The old lady just kicking
And I think there's a reason for that, which there's another clip later where somebody's talking about this aspect of it. What filming it does is it turns crime into a monetisable event. Not in the obvious way whereby a speed camera snaps you and you get a fine in the post. That's the really obvious way where it's just cash generating machines. But in a more subtle way, cameras turn crime into a monetisable thing. Revenue for the courts. Now this picture, I took this in Moseley. I was walking along the pavement past the police station, took a picture of this mobile CCTV van. I was stopped and questioned immediately about my suspicious behaviour. And they mentioned terrorism. And when I stopped laughing in their faces and explaining the law and my rights to them, they told me off for being rude. But Big Brother doesn't like being watched, that's for sure. So the cameras don't work. We've looked at the research that says they have no effect on crime. And most people would still find that difficult to believe. Even though I've shown you the evidence, you're maybe not sure if you actually believe it. Because everyone knows. It must do, right? I mean, that's what they tell us all the time. But cameras don't stop crime. They don't even solve crime. They don't catch the criminals. We just think they do. What they do is they record crime. And something I've said for a while is that when you put CCTV cameras up, it turns that area or that street scene into a scene of crime. As soon as you put the camera up, you're creating security theatre, and this is going to be the scene of crime. So the camera is almost the promise that a crime will happen. And when it does, ka-ching. Now, taking it further, there's a guy, I listened to this guy did a broadcast recently. He was talking about the social psychology of mass surveillance. And this is where I think it really gets interesting, because if it doesn't work to tackle crime, then what's the purpose of it? What's it doing? Is it doing other things? Is it doing good things, bad things? What's it doing if it's not tackling crime? So here's a guy called Samuel Williams. and he's talking about his theories about mass surveillance and what he thinks it does.
To digitise with how regularly we photograph everything we do. Now, surveillance, we've decided to digitise everything. We are digitising and recording everything that happens in the physical realm. Of course, you cannot experience that physically, everything all at once. You would be called a god. So essentially what you've got going on in the surveillance world is that there's some entity, which is essentially just a group of individuals who are in the intelligence services. They're maybe part of a security team. We're not really allowed to know who they are for security reasons, but they have access to knowledge that is godlike. It's like a digital god. That is essentially, I think, why so many people worship surveillance. It comes with a promise of protection, as if you are being protected by some all-seeing, all-powerful entity like a digital god. But, of course, it's an empty, empty promise. As we all know, surveillance doesn't actually stop crime. Now, what surveillance does is it records crime as it happens. And a lot of people say, well, that's fine. I mean, essentially, you know, that you could get retribution, you could get vengeance, you could get justice, some people call it. You could get justice, because if you are robbed, that person will then be prosecuted, and you possibly might get your property back, you might not, but at least you'll be firm in the knowledge that digital god, i.e. the justice system, i.e. the grand protector, the state, has had its vengeance and punished this person. So essentially, surveillance comes with a promise of punishment for crimes. So a higher order will punish anybody who does anything against the prevailing order. Whenever you try and logically analyse the psychology that's going on with surveillance, the arguments always seem like a religious argument. It's about power, control, faith, like an Old Testament type of retribution. It's about violence. And I think that's my problem with surveillance, because each camera is a promise of violence if you step outside what is established by this prevailing order, or different enough to warrant correction. So essentially what is pointing at you when a camera is pointing at you is not a camera, it is a weapon, it's a gun, it's a promise of violence retribution. Of course, a lot of people actually will be anti-CCTV, anti-surveillance, because they say it's an excuse to not put a bobby on the beat. They say actually that a bobby on the beat stops a lot more crime, because people see the bobby, they don't even do the crime. And the CCTV is a sort of dissuading people from doing crime because they might be caught afterwards. And therefore, they put up a CCTV camera, they put up a surveillance camera, because it's an excuse not to put a policeman there on that corner or in that area or whatever. Well, yes, that's a good argument, but there's one crucial difference that I will sort of mention, which is this. When a policeman is there in person, the crime doesn't happen. Nobody is going to go up and mug someone when there's a policeman standing there, which means no crime happens. Which is, I would say, possibly preferable to the crime actually happening and just being recorded. But the importance of this point is that when there's a CCTV camera, it doesn't stop the crime. It turns the crime into a monetizable event. It means that the courts, along with their sort of facial recognition or just identification through CCTV, it means the courts can monetize crime. So, if anything, and this is the overriding criticism of the police as they're run now anyway, in that they are a corporate entity, a corporate company run for profit, which is why they, instead of wanting to sort of arrest people and cart them around, transport them around, put them in a cell and all this kind of stuff, and then release them without charge, which is what happens, generally they'll try and convince people that instead of being arrested, they should accept a financial penalty, a fixed fine notice or whatever, because they just want the money. Now I think that's the prevailing thing here. These CCTVs, these are money-making, revenue-collecting, crime monetization devices that are never, ever going to stop crime. They're just going to make money from crime. In actual fact, a CCTV camera, a surveillance camera, is almost a promise that crime will happen, because it's there to capture that crime. You could say that a CCTV camera or a surveillance camera is no use in a place where there's never any crime. Well, analyse the word use in that sentence, and you'll see that the only use is to monetize the crime. In no way is the way that I'm talking now going to finalise any of the logic and any of the arguments around here. I just use this as an avenue of discussion, realisation that surveillance is bad. So thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe to my...
I've got some interesting ideas there about digital guard, about the monetisation of crime, and it's all quite valid, because knowing that CCTV and surveillance does nothing to crime, it doesn't affect crime, then you have to start thinking what else it does and what else it can do, whether intended or unintended.
Can I put a footnote, Steve, to what you've been saying here? The Safer Roads Partnership...
Don't get me started.
The cameras, the number of cameras that have gone up over the years, supposedly making the roads safer, and the number of fines that have gone up exponentially over the year, hasn't changed one single statistic of accidents or death on the road anywhere. It's a money-making system. It has nothing to do with safety. And I'm actually thinking of prosecuting some of them under the Trade Descriptions Act.
Roger's totally correct. It's absolutely right. The reason to justify the cameras is that it will improve safety. It will make us safer. It will reduce crime, stop crime, or catch offenders when they do commit. And we buy into that. But as just the road safety thing, which I haven't really got into the whole sort of speed cameras or it's more about the tracking that I'm interested in. But Roger's absolutely right. It doesn't do what we're told it's there to do. It does other things. 19th century philosopher, a social reformer, a guy called Jeremy Bentham, designed what he thought was the perfect prison. And instead of having machine guns and guards and that kind of approach to locking people up, it was all done with surveillance. Surveillance was the power that was exercised to control people. And as he described it, he invented the technology of power, using surveillance in prisons. And he said the major effect of the panopticon, which was his structure, that you're all sort of able to view permanent visibility of everyone. The major effect of the panopticon is to induce in the inmate a state of conscious and permanent visibility that assures the automatic functioning of power. And the idea that video surveillance, the idea of video surveillance is almost literally the same, a technological solution to solve the problem of surveillance in urban space. In urban space, absolute visibility is legitimised with the claim of and guarantee of absolute security. Now, I'm quoting here from a study by Surveillance and Society into the social psychology of mass surveillance. It's called Cam Era, the Contemporary Urban Panopticon.
These are the cells.
There's a central watchtower.
So no one can see each other.
And it's all viewable from this central location. So there may be no doors, no locks, there are no guards, but there's this central surveillance watchtower which can't be seen. You can't see the watcher, so everyone has to assume that they can be watched, could be watched, might be being watched, probably are being watched all the time. And it's the threat of being watched rather than actually being watched that's where the effect kicks in, because it's a system of psychological control. And here's a little film, it's a shortish clip about the panopticon principle.
Long ago, our ancient ancestors imagined an omniscient God, able to see all that we do. This God would judge all actions and punish misdeeds, either in this life or the next. Fearing punishment from this all-seeing eye of a wrathful God, devout citizens followed a system of morals and ethics, for even what the law was blind to, God would see and punish. Today, not much escapes the eye of the law. Cameras are perched atop poles all along the highway, on the corners of buildings, in parking lots, apartment complexes, and inside stores, restaurants, and offices. The internet traffic is monitored now, almost globally, censored and watched in China and India, stored and scanned in England, and heavily monitored in the United States by the Einstein program, an NSA-mandated complete internet oversight project enacted as a part of the controversial Patriot Act. Phone calls have been tapped without warrant, and text messages are logged. Background checking companies access social networking sites where any number of acquaintances have tagged photographs of you anywhere and everywhere. Internet service providers keep logs of your internet use to create a consumer profile that they sell to advertising companies and anyone else with enough money. You get nothing, aside from privacy violation. Are you being watched? There's no longer any doubt about that. This continual observation of the public conjures images of the Orwellian Big Brother. 1984 is continually monitoring propaganda box installed in every citizen's home and work. It also makes you watch yourself, if only because you feel like you're being watched by someone else. Even if no one can see, you still fear the prying eye of your tattletale neighbor or a powerful government. You fear driving too fast because of speed traps and unmarked police cars. They could be lurking in an alley or behind a tree or sign somewhere. And if they aren't, there are cameras to automatically issue tickets. Officials even scan roadside camera footage to mail out tickets for parking violations when no one was around to personally ticket tow or boot your car. This is the Panopticon. First designed by the English utilitarian social reformer Jeremy Bentham in 1785, the Panopticon is a cylindrical wall of prison cells surrounding a central tower. Atop this tower is a room circled by 360 degrees of one-way mirror, allowing for a gunman to see everyone, but for no one to see where he is aiming. Out of fear, the prisoners watch themselves, assuming that they are targeted at any given moment. But with this sentiment of an invisible omniscience, it becomes unnecessary to even have an armed guard at all. Consider the infrequent amount of wiretapping and internet investigations now, despite heavy media coverage. Look around at all the dummy cameras that look exactly like the real thing, but record nothing at all. Is this not a modern technological panopticon? French philosopher Michel Foucault transformed this concept into what he termed disciplinary society, fearing at all times the eye of the law. Because we know we might be watched, and might therefore be punished, we obey whatever laws are enacted, and even fear to speak out against those laws that seem unfair. So why is the panopticon an evil mechanism? Some might claim that despite violating privacy and personal liberties, that constant surveillance seriously reduces criminal activity. Perhaps. But in the absence of cameras, in a power outage, by cutting the cables, by masking your IP address or making anonymous phone calls in phone booths, crime will thrive. This is because the fear of discipline has replaced mankind's reverence for ethics and morality. People fear the police rather than attempt to make positive decisions merely for the sake of being a good citizen. They broadcast their good deeds on MySpace or Facebook to show everyone how compassionate they are. Is this not merely selfish promotion in the guise of charity? Replacing the individual morality and the democratic evolution of an ethical system with a central lawmaking body that has eyes all over the globe and an unrestricted permit to kill and imprison makes a simulacra of our decision-making abilities. Our kindnesses and distaste for unethical behavior are delegated to others. Why think about what's wrong if someone else is there to do it for you? Why apprehend a criminal when someone else is there to catch them? Under the all-knowing, all-seeing eye of the modern panopticon, no one cares, and those that do are afraid to speak up.
Digitization of everything and the automation, the analytical software. So all this surveillance, people think that surveillance is about somebody spying on you, snooping on you, taking notes, like a private investigator perhaps, or a police investigation. But now it's done automatically by software, So there may be a massive file on you. That doesn't mean to say that somebody's following you around. You only need to have your name entered on a particular list or database. And all this stuff automatically accrues. And you won't know anything about it.
Do you remember break? Yeah. You've titillated him there with
thinking of while Annie was talking was about CCTV proving your innocence. I think you said something in relation to cameras helping prove that you're innocent. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't tend to happen. Police aren't really interested in proving anyone's innocence. They're interested in securing prosecutions. And often they will go out of their way to secure them. Has anyone heard of a man called Jean-Charles de Menezes? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what happened to him? Shot dead, executed effectively on the tube. We were told that he was shot dead because they thought he was a suspected terrorist with a bomb and he was going to blow the tube up. But do you know why? Do you know why he was shot dead?
Triggered the explosion.
No. What killed him, apart from the bullets, I think 6 of them entered his body, but the other 4 missed. I don't know where they went, these crack snipers. But what killed him was a CCTV camera. Because they were following a suspect who they also should not have shot, and who lived in the same building. And Jean-Charles de Menezes, just an honest electrician I think he was, looked a bit like somebody else that the police were interested in. And this is in the Stockwell 1 report. The report into that incident is published, and you can go and look for it and find it. But it won't have been brought to your attention by the media because they tend not to do this. The reason Jean-Charles de Menezes was shot dead is because he bore a resemblance to somebody else. He looked a bit like another dark fellow. And in the Stockwell 1 report it says the police radioed in from the block of flats where Jean-Charles and the other suspect guy lived. And they said it's a good possible likeness, and they were basing that decision on a still image from a CCTV camera that they were using to identify the suspected terrorist. So on the basis that it was a good possible likeness, they shot him dead. So CCTV didn't help him. Nor did it help Nico Bento, who was the subject of a Panorama documentary about forensic science and their involvement in CCTV footage. He was sent down for life for murder, for murdering his girlfriend, and the sole evidence that convicted him was CCTV footage, which he wasn't even in. How can that happen? Well, there was some footage of his girlfriend walking down the street, her last known movements. She was subsequently found drowned in a lake, and obviously the boyfriend and the husband are usually the main suspects, and the police decided they would nail the boyfriend because he probably did it. They went to the Forensic Science Service in the UK, and Britain being the CCTV capital of the world, we've got the best experts, and they all said, they looked at the footage and said, well, yeah, it's footage of a woman walking down the street. And the police suggested, no, what we want you to see is that she's carrying a handbag. The same handbag that was found at the boyfriend's flat after her death, and therefore, if she is indeed carrying that handbag in that footage, he killed her. So they went to all the UK experts and they said, no, there's nothing there. There's nothing at all. There's no way you can see anything there. There's no handbag. And if you pursue that line, you're on very dodgy ground. So the police said, all right, thanks for your advice. So they went to America and they found a guy in Los Angeles. No, sorry, not Los Angeles, Las Vegas. A controversial CCTV forensic science expert who was willing to basically perjure himself to support the police's hypothesis that there was a handbag in the footage and that therefore the guy killed her. So he maintained that the pixels that he was magnifying and enhancing were in fact not just shadows but a handbag. And therefore it was him what done it. And on that basis alone, he was sent down for life. Fortunately for him, Nico Bento, he managed to overturn the prosecution, was exonerated and acquitted. And the police issued a public statement saying, well, it looks like he's got away with murder. He then sued the police for libel and won £20,000 damages, but it later emerged there was no evidence that the woman was even murdered. She drowned in a lake, but it's now believed that she committed suicide. So there was no crime, or at least there was no murder, but the police fitted him up using forensic science interpretation of images of CCTV that he wasn't even in. So when people say nothing to hide, nothing to fear, well, let's hope that's true, but it isn't always the case. Another example of that is a band called The Thirst, a London-based rock band, I think they are. They were loading equipment into their van, drum kits, microphone stand, guitars, that kind of thing. A vigilant, or perhaps overzealous CCTV operator claimed he saw them loading weapons into the van. They were immediately swooped upon by an armed response unit, and they were locked up and treated like terrorists for I think 48 hours. But they were absolutely terrified. They were traumatised, and some of them was, had to have counselling. And they described lying on the floor with a police machine gun pointed at their head. And one guy said, I could see the guy's hands shaking as he pointed his machine gun at my head. And they hadn't done anything wrong either. But they could have ended up the same way as Jean-Charles de Menezes, because there was a CCTV operator who said, it looks like guns they've got there, or I think I saw a gun. Anyway, the principle of the panopticon, which is where we left it before the break, was about the idea of believing that you're always seen and being watched. So there's no physical intervention required. Surveillance cameras, it can be claimed that those surveillance cameras, sorry, that should be through. Through surveillance cameras, the panoptic technology of power has been electronically extended, and now our cities have become like an enormous panopticon. So our cities have become prisons based on surveillance. This is the contention of these social psychologists. Another guy called Michel Foucault, I still don't know how to pronounce his name, but I'm trying. He wrote a lot about disciplinary society. There is no need for arms, physical violence, material constraints, just a gaze, an inspecting gaze. A gaze which each individual, which each individual under its weight will end by interiorizing to the point that he is his own overseer. Each individual thus exercising this surveillance over and against himself. A superb formula. Power exercised continually and for what turns out to be at minimal cost. And this is the psychological aspects of mass surveillance.
That's entirely written by the Catholic Church, I think.
Well, and this is the point about surveillance being a digital God. It's a replacement for something that everyone believed in. God will see me and punish me. Now we live in a secular society. A lot of people have no faith, and they don't buy that anymore. So they need to buy into something else, which is, I will be seen by the powers that be, the authorities, the cameras. So are we creating an Orwellian surveillance state, or are we already in one? Shortly after the publication of 1984, Orwell commented about the book. And he said it wasn't an exact prediction of what the future will hold, but something like it could arrive. Totalitarian ideas have taken root in the minds of intellectuals everywhere, and I've tried to draw these ideas out to their logical conclusions. And it was set in Britain, 1984, and he said it was set in Britain in order to emphasise that the English-speaking races are not innately better than anyone else, and that totalitarianism, if not fought against, could triumph anywhere. And I'm obviously trying to fight against totalitarianism, and this is me on trying to do just that on BBC Radio Newcastle.
There'll be subtitles for those who don't understand.
It's estimated there's one CCTV camera for every 14 people in the UK. Yeah, one for every 14. Steve Joy is from a campaign group called No CCTV. Fairly clear there, which side of the fence he sits on, but why is Steve so against using cameras for surveillance?
CCTV has had no effect on crime, and this is something that the British public simply doesn't understand, because there's a huge gulf of disparity between the public perception of what CCTV can do and what it actually does. All the studies show, including those commissioned by the Home Office itself, that CCTV has had no significant effect on crime. Well, this will come as a shock to the public, because they believe that this is how we police nowadays. So what the question we have to ask is, if it doesn't work for its stated purpose, would you still want it? And most people would say no, because effectively all it's doing is just spying on everybody.
What's your response to the fact that a lot of people tend to think that if you've done nothing wrong, there's no reason to object to it?
I think that's a rather sad and false argument. It seems to make sense on the face of it, but what it actually does is it subverts the foundation of our justice system. It sweeps away the presumption of innocence and suggests that it's up to the citizen to prove that they have done nothing wrong by opening their life to constant and perpetual investigation. And that's quite simply wrong, because it turns us all into suspects. It gathers information about us in advance on the assumption that we may all be criminals. And that's simply wrong.
When we talked about CCTV recently, there was a suggestion that the media have come to rely on it. So,
yeah, simply wrong. That was the sort of gist of my point. But it's very hard to get across, because we've really bought into the idea that we should surrender all our privacy and open ourselves to perpetual investigation to prove that we have nothing to hide. Which is really the opposite of the way it's supposed to be. You know. Somebody should have evidence that you've done something wrong, and then you should have to defend that evidence. But now, we flip that. You've got to prove you've done nothing wrong, and you've got to let somebody investigate every aspect of your life. Because why would you object to that happening, unless you're a criminal? It gives more power to those that want it. Alright, okay.
Shift F5.
Shift and F5. Shift and F5, you say? Bingo! We have a winner. This is Nick Clegg, an optimistic Nick Clegg speaking just after the election, and he promised us all sorts of victories. He said, "Oh, don't worry, we're going to restore your freedoms and liberties. I'm the man for the job." Unfortunately, I think his impotent Nick has realised that he can't really do anything because they won't let him, and he's just going to have a moan about it from the sidelines. But this is one of the things that really kind of sparked me up in 2010 when he was banging on about restoring our liberties and standing up against the state, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to do that. He said it's outrageous that decent law-abiding citizens are regularly treated as if they have something to hide. It has to stop. This will be a government that is proud when ordinary citizens stand up against the illegitimate advances of the state. And I think maybe he realised that the politicians can't save us from this, and that it is up to ordinary citizens, people like us, people like you and me, to do something. You know, if you think something must be done about this, then you're the person to do it. When those cameras were installed in Birmingham, I thought someone must do something about this. Something must be done. And I looked to my councillors and my MP and other people, and they weren't really up to the job. They weren't really doing it. Nobody wanted to stick their neck on the line. They've got political careers. So I said, well, all right, forget you lot. I'll do it. I've got nothing to lose. So yeah, it really is up to ordinary citizens to do something. We can't leave it to the politicians. But yeah, is Britain becoming a place where our children grow up so used to their liberty being infringed that they accept it without question? Well, the reason that's in red is because the schools are a playground, a battleground in the fight for civil liberties. Kids are being trained, I mean it starts with the baby monitor, but kids are being trained to get used to perpetual surveillance as a good thing. So it creates acceptance of surveillance, the promise of security and safety and protection. It provides reassurance. And on that basis we've got biometric ID, fingerprinting kids in schools, effectively barcoding them. This is supposedly to get rid of bullying, because if they've got no dinner money in their pockets, they're not going to get bullied, are they? So give us your fingerprint. That's the logic. And people believe this. They go, yeah, well, that's fair enough. Facial recognition, not being used so much or at all perhaps in this country, but certainly in America, because that will stamp out truancy. Yeah, it will. Electronic tagging. There are schools that have they're either badges or they're in a uniform or in the school bag, or there's an electronic RFID tag that they have about their person, and every student, every pupil, child will be monitored around the premises. Surely it's enough that you know that they're in school, but no, you've got to know exactly where they are in school. These are sort of beta testing grounds for new surveillance technologies, and it's the children that are being trained and getting used to it. And the worrying thing, one of the worrying things for me, is that support for CCTV and surveillance has become linked to good citizenship. So if you're a good person, if you're a good law-abiding, tax-paying person, you will be in favour of CCTV and surveillance. Of course you will. Why wouldn't you be? You want to catch those criminals, those people that don't pay their tax MOT. They rob things, they sell drugs. They're the people that the cameras are for. They're not looking at you. So why would you be against it? Unless you're a criminal. And that's the prevailing thought. But just to demonstrate that there is almost no problem to which CCTV can't provide a solution, here's a clip I found, and I couldn't stop laughing when I couldn't stop laughing.
you. School officials in Texas are hoping that surveillance cameras in the cafeteria will help them fight childhood obesity. High-tech cameras have been installed in lunchrooms in San Antonio to capture what kids are eating and what food is being left behind. Digital imaging analysis of those snapshots will calculate how many calories each one of these kids is consuming. $2 million project, which is funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is the first of its kind here in the U.S. Parents will have to sign a permission slip before their child can be photographed, and researchers hope that parents will change eating habits at home once they see how their kids are eating at school.
Fair enough, isn't it?
I mean, surely
it's in the breadcrumbs.
Stop serving junk food in the first place.
Well, I think what they're doing is they're going to serve up turkey Twizzlers and chips, and then they're going to see how much is being eaten and left. It doesn't really make sense. I don't understand that. But seemingly cameras can help with any problem at all. It doesn't matter what. Back to the classroom. There we were. That's where we were, isn't it? Okay. Now this is, since I mentioned Nick Clegg earlier, this is something he said a bit later, after promising to restore our freedoms. Then he admitted, perhaps when he found out that, you know, what the truth really was, he said, "I need to say this, you shouldn't trust any government, actually, including this one. You should not trust government, full stop. The natural inclination of government is to hoard power and information, to accrue power to itself in the name of the public good."
Nick Clegg said that?
Yeah, in an interview in The Observer in 2011. So just how much power and information does the state want? And who is the state anyway? You know, with the state starting to overlap and merge with private corporations like Google and Facebook and all sorts of other, you know, military, who are the powers that be? That's what.
Just out of interest, what you said earlier about if you're considered a law-abiding citizen and you accept CCTV, if that's the case, are there any cameras in Parliament? Because we all know that politicians aren't exactly squeaky clean, so I'm just wondering.
There are actually.
You also can't record the proceedings of a statutory court. Well, what am I frightened of?
If anyone's ever been in a courtroom, there are signs saying, if you're caught filming or recording in any way, you will be done. You're in big trouble, mate.
Because they want to commit a crime. That's why you're not allowed to do it.
Mussolini just defined the merger of state and corporate power as one of the key characteristics of fascism. But, you know, maybe I've just been thinking too much about all this stuff. I mean, I'm just getting a bit paranoid. Perhaps I should go to my doctor. So, this made me laugh. Everyone read that?
I think it's a way to tell them. You have to read it.
Everyone had a chance to read that?
No.
No.
I'm a bit slow.
But all those things are happening. That is not, it's not crazy talk.
There was a Mel Gibson film, wasn't there? Conspiracy, was it, or something? Where he said, "I'm being watched all the time, I'm being watched all," and they were like, "You're an idiot, he's locked up, he lost his job." Mel Gibson, I think, Conspiracy. But the Truman Show is equally
Yes, but it's everywhere,
Getting back to the role of the state, a lot of people think that the state, the government, is there to look after the population, to make sure that society works, everything runs properly, and everyone's looked after. You know, I heard somebody say that, a 15-year-old girl, she said, "But the job of the government is to look after everybody." I kept my mouth shut. I thought, she's too young to have her illusions shattered. But this is what Philip K. Dick said, a science fiction author, many great works, won't go into those, about the role of the state. "Any government which assumes that the population is going to do something evil has already lost its franchise to govern. Once the government begins to mistrust the people it is governing, it loses its mandate to rule because it is no longer acting as a spokesman for the people, but is acting as an agent of persecution. And that's quite relevant now because we're increasingly asked to trust the government while it clearly doesn't trust us. It wants copies of all our web searches and emails and phone calls and text messages. It wants to film us perpetually and track our movements in our cars. And it asks us to trust the government. But clearly, it isn't a two-way trust, is it? It's only one way. So the government's proposed this Snoopers Charter, which is basically complete access to your life, living your life side by side if it wants to, or if it wants to just computerise a file. You know, there needn't be any people actively involved, human, on that level. You know, it's the automation of it, it's the data gathering is just huge. I mean, just to give you an example. In the Nevada desert, there's a place called Bluffdale, and the United States is building a data centre there, full of warehouses, full of computer servers. It's so vast, it's the middle of nowhere. It's something like 5 times the size of Washington DC. Warehouses, huge warehouses full of computer servers to store every single electronic communication on the planet. And a lot of them were picked up from Menwith Hill, and there's going to be a protest in Menwith Hill coming up soon. That GCHQ style listening centre that's whereabouts is it? Menwith Hill? Yorkshire. That's close enough. That'll do me. So yeah, there is an obsession with surveillance and data gathering. And the government wants to know everything about everyone for any reason automatically. So I'm going to just so part of this is about my attempts to kind of tell people that there's something they should be concerned about and to try and challenge it and just get a bit of that into the sort of public discourse. So this is me, again, trying to tell people that this internet snooping bill is not a great idea.
Do you give a fake name when you ring in?
No, I don't ring in. I get invited on as a guest, as a spokesman. But you know, often it's the guy who's kind of anti-government or doesn't like cameras. So they don't quite understand me really. But here's this is Adrian Goldberg. I'm talking to Adrian Goldberg on Radio W.
To record all conversations on the internet, tracking everything today about what critics are calling the Snoopers Charter. The government has unveiled plans to record all conversations on the internet, tracking every email, every web search, recording every phone call that you make. So would you be happy if a civil servant, if a spy or a police officer was able to track all of your internet traffic, listen to all of your intimate mobile phone calls? Do you trust government to use the information they obtain about you wisely and fairly? Is it a good idea? Could it prevent a major terrorist outrage? Or are we on the brink of Big Brother Britain? Give us a call, 08453 009956, or you can text on 81333. Start your message with WM. Earlier, we heard from Anthony Glees, who's the Director of the Centre for Security and Intelligence at the University of Buckingham.
If they want privacy, then don't use the internet, don't use mobile phones, and don't email people. If you don't care and you've got nothing to hide, and the vast majority of people are in that position, then why worry about it?
Let's get a reaction now from Steve Jolly, spokesman for the group No CCTV, civil rights campaigner in Birmingham, campaigned against the CCTV cameras which West Midlands Police plan to erect in largely Muslim areas of Birmingham. Hiya, Steve.
Morning, Adrian.
So what do you make of this?
Well, just that last comment, I mean, if you want your privacy, then stay at home, don't go online, don't talk to anybody. It's not only preposterous, but it's extremely disturbing. I'm disturbed by this legislation because let's just put it in context for a second. Britain was once the cradle of modern democracy, but now we're beginning to resemble a one-party totalitarian police state like China. And in fact, this legislation puts us in the same category as China and Iran, regimes which Britain has criticised for its human rights abuses and for its mass monitoring of the population. And
but isn't the key question, Steve, what it would be used for, and if it would be used to prevent a terrorist atrocity in which dozens of people might die, if it can be...
The key question is, obviously, does the government have a right to take that information from you? Not how they're going to use it, but...
used to detect major crime, then you can understand why the forces of law and order would regard it as an asset.
No, I don't agree, because this is always the convenient justification that's trotted out by governments to say, we're protecting you, we're keeping you secure from terrorism and from crime. And it's simply not true. What it really amounts to is a power grab, seizing more and more control over every aspect of our lives. And I think people should start to wake up and realise the scale of the political lying that we're up against. I mean, I think political lying works because people have such short memories. I mean, only 2 years ago after the election, we were told by the government that this government will end the culture of spying on its citizens. We won't hold your internet and email records when there is just no reason to do so. But now we're being told that actually there is reason to hold everyone's email records because you're all suspects. So what's happened here is that we've been turned from citizens into suspects. And that's a really worrying development because it's flipped the very foundation of our justice system. It's got rid of the presumption of innocence and it's replaced it with a presumption of guilt. Now, everybody's a suspect, and the government feels that it has the right to monitor and record everything we say, think and do, and everywhere we go.
Yeah, but Steve, it's interesting you referred to a couple of years back, or maybe 3 or 4 years back, Jackie Smith.
Then agent starts talking about Labour, Lib Dem, Tories, which is, to me, is all an irrelevance, really. But I think I'm supposed to get my key points across. And the first caller who phoned in said, "That's Steve Jolly. I agree with everything he said. He was absolutely spot on." And that's the second time that somebody's phoned in and said that, which is really, quite pleasing to get that sort of public response. Right, anybody know how I get to this slide to full view now? Everyone knows but me.
They're all saying shift 5,
I'll get that, hang on. Okay. Noam Chomsky. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of him. Thinker, academic writer, all sorts of other things as well. He's spoken about propaganda and the manufacturing of consent, how consent and support can be engineered in society using the media and all sorts of other ways. The smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow very lively debate within that spectrum. So often when I do these interviews about surveillance issues, the debate seems to be framed within very narrow perimeters. So the middle ground is in the middle, but the whole box is over here when it should be over there. So the middle ground isn't really where you think it is. And here's another clip of me. A guy called Peter Levy who loves CCTV and he thinks that anyone would be against it is just mad and probably a criminal. And so he likes to give me a hard time. I've gone head to head with him about 3 times now. And he did phone me up to do something that there was a story involving an MP, an altercation on a train. It was all filmed in the city. And he phoned me up. You've got to come on the show. But I was on a train or something, and I can find the right file. Radio Sheffield, Peter Levy, Radio Homicide. Oh, I lost my clip. I'll tell you what I'll do. I think that's the one.
It's been decided that the closed-circuit TV camera system in Lincoln, which is currently under review, won't be... Lincoln Council says that that option has been removed from the plans because of the feedback that they've had. Steve Jolly is for no to CCTV and joining us on the line now. Mr. Jolly, good afternoon to you. Hello, Peter. It sounds like people like CCTV, so I think you're fighting a losing battle, aren't you, on your campaign?
No, at all. The reason that people seem to like CCTV is that they're being misinformed rather than informed. I mean, the Home Office knows that CCTV is a costly failed experiment. It knows that it doesn't stop or solve crime. There have been hundreds of studies done, and the most extensive one in 2008 by the Campbell Collaboration, commissioned by the Home Office, concluded that CCTV had no significant effect on crime. They know this, but that's not the message that's given to the British public. In fact, the Protection of Freedoms Bill and the measures that are in surveillance cameras, one of the main objectives is to increase public support for CCTV.
But when you sort of have a discussion about losing CCTV, which is what's happening in Lincoln, people overwhelmingly, they love it. It makes them feel secure, it makes them feel happy, and we obviously catch people who are doing wrong through it. So it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
No, it requires a lot of thought, and it's something that people haven't thought about. The idea that it is a no-brainer is a very dangerous position to take.
So these people are misguided, are they? I think that.
Well, they're misinformed, yes. I mean, they believe that they used to think that they say they feel safe, they believe that it catches crimes, that's to reduce crime, solves crime. But that's simply not the case. It's not all evidence. If you tell people misleading information, they're going to come to the wrong view, aren't they? And that's exactly what's happened here. That's what we predicted in CCTV when you had a solution. I think a few months ago when the story was first.
You're fighting a losing battle. That's the thing, because people are not with you on this. They like CCTV. We see people catch caught by CCTV. We see it on the TV. We catch people. I don't understand why you still are so against it.
Because we know the facts. If you've got two different positions being put out, one by all the studies that have ever been done that say it doesn't work, and a completely different story being put out by the media, by local councils, and the police, that say it does work, and what are people going to believe? They're not going to go and read these reports. They're terribly dull. Nobody reads them, but what they do see in the television...
But why do you think... Just tell me in one sentence why you think it is a bad thing that a city like Lincoln has CCTV.
Well, firstly, it's a huge waste of money. We're spending millions of pounds of public money on something that doesn't work, when we should be looking at the causes of crime. We should be looking at strengthening communities rather than placing technology in place which will simply remove freedoms and privacy and won't do the job they say to do.
But people are not bothered about the privacy thing. If you're doing I can predict it from now. It'll be, if you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to worry about.
I think that's almost predictive programming or neurolinguistic programming. Over and over again, people will think it's true.
I read it over and over again because we talked about this back in whenever it was, in the spring.
But it's not the job of the state broadcaster to be a cheerleader for the broadcaster.
I'm not being a cheerleader, I'm being the other side of the coin because the council is not here and the people of Lincoln are not here, so I'm speaking up for them. Those that obviously do want CCTV.
It doesn't reduce crime, which is still supported, they would say no, but they believe it works because they've been lied to. We should scrap this costly failed experiment now and start looking at the causes of crime.
And if you have examples where somebody who's been, and there are examples in our pub.
That's the sort of typical response you get when you discuss it in the media. But this one's even better. This one's quite. He goes out of his way. He's really.
Which would then be able to identify those faces and information about those people.
Okay, I mean, there will be people who... I mean, these cameras aren't doing that, are they, Mike? These are just counting the number of people there.
Not at all. It's a simple mechanism for counting bodies passing the camera lens.
Right, okay, so these aren't doing that, Stephen. The question has to be, even if they are, what's the problem? I mean, surely that can only protect people who need protecting, can't it?
What, facial recognition cameras?
Yeah.
I think most people would be very concerned if they thought that every time they walked down the high street their identity was being checked and monitored and referenced to databases. I think most people would be very concerned about that.
I don't think they would. I do a radio phone every morning. I would imagine that most people wouldn't give them monkeys.
There is a perfectly legitimate network of other CCTV cameras that are used by the council and the police to protect the public and protect business.
I think that's the point, Mike. I completely take your point about these CCTV cameras, but if I'm in Chesterfield and I get mugged, you have got enough cameras to follow the mugger and catch him, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Of course. Absolutely. I don't know what the problem is, I've got to be honest with you. Am I just missing something there? I'm genuinely interested. Are you worried that CCTV might be able to recognise you if you're a baddie? Simon, thanks for that. I know that's what you came in to be interviewed for. I want to ask you just about something else, but I don't want to lead you down any path. I don't want to give an opinion that you don't want to give. We're going to talk later on in our phone, after 9 o'clock, about the use of CCTV. All I want is a yes or no answer. I guess I know what it is. In your opinion, has CCTV been useful in Sheffield City Centre?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all I need for Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Chief Inspector Simon Reed.
You're going to play that first before we end the whole talk.
Surely you're only a problem to these things if you've got something to hide.
Well, I'm wary about saying that, Bob, because it makes you sound a bit Daily Express, doesn't it? But I think you're right.
There you go. If you're against surveillance, constant, perpetual, intrusive, extreme surveillance, you're a criminal. And if you're not going to hide and you support CCTV, you're a good citizen. Are we clear on that? Or are any of you starting to have doubts? Okay. I'm going to try the magic buttons again.
It's a panacea for all. Shift and F5.
Don't try that.
I'm going home tonight.
Okay. Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, was also a psychiatrist and psychologist. He specialised in crowd behaviour, crowd psychology, ways of influencing the masses, basically, and manipulating the masses. And he realised that the media has awesome power. And this guy literally wrote a book. He called it Propaganda. And there's another clip. This one's a really short one, but this is Noam Chomsky again, talking about how propaganda works and how simple and effective it is.
Control both edges.
Bottom left.
Can anyone see it?
It was a process of elimination because
it's not there.
Is it that one?
It's not there. Chomsky's gone, okay. Can't find Chomsky.
We'll have to do the last word anyway because we're running out of time.
I know. Well, I'm nearly at the end, so, you know, we actually timed it okay. But basically what Chomsky says is all the information for you to discover and learn the truth about whatever it is you want to find out about, it's all there. It's all there. You look for it. But it's not necessarily the same as the information that's spoon-fed to you by the 6 o'clock news. So he's basically saying this is how propaganda works. You come home, you're tired, hard day at work, you have something to eat, put the telly on, catch the news, the headlines. Yeah, it's probably right. Bit of sport. You don't want to spend the evening carrying out a research project. It's that simple. He said, and then he says, all the other stuff is there. You just have to work to find it. So, you find what you look for, or you get spoon-fed something which might not be everything you need to know. Coming back to Birmingham and their strategy, talking about consent, Chomsky's talking about the manufacturing consent, how we can engineer consent, we can make people support war or some other policy. This is what Burby was saying. It is a fact that the majority of the population of the United Kingdom are supportive of the use of public space CCTV for improving community safety. A recent survey commissioned by the Office of the Information Commissioner reinforces this overwhelming support for CCTV, reporting that the British public feels safer with CCTV. Therefore, it is considered a good thing. But there's a but, and they acknowledge this but. However, they said, it would be wrong to take this support for granted. The consent of the public is essential to the effective operation of the public space CCTV system. If they considered it was intrusive or oppressive, their cooperation and consent could evaporate. The experience concerning speed cameras is not one that the public space CCTV would wish to emulate. Nobody likes speed cameras, do they? Never met anyone who liked them. Nobody likes them. They weren't popular. We wouldn't want the same thing to happen to general CCTV. But now, this bottom statement here, the experience concerning speed cameras, now they replace that with Project Champion. We don't want another repeat of Project Champion where we scare the horses and people get spooked and they go, oh, we don't want that. It's all about keeping the consent going, keeping the support there. And all you really have to do is to stop consenting, withdraw your consent, and get others to do the same. Challenge people's faulty assumptions about privacy and surveillance and ask them where we're heading. Orwell drew out the logical conclusions of the direction we're on. He said, okay, this is the direction we're going in. We're here now. If we keep going that direction, where will we end up? And what the policymakers have never told us is, well, what is their vision? Where are they intending to take us? They've never spelled out the vision. They just tell us more this way, more and more surveillance. So we really need to get people to reconsider their attitudes and beliefs, show them some new information, get them to just step back a bit and look at it from a slightly different perspective, with a little bit of new information, and hopefully they will come to see things differently. I mean, I've done quite a lot in trying to get this message across, but you know, not everyone has to do that. There's so many of us. If everyone just starts to think slightly differently about the issue, it wouldn't be this problem. It's all driven on public support and consent, which is assumed, if not explicitly. And what we just need to do is withdraw that and say why. And I guess that's the gist of my mission. And that's the end of my talk. So hopefully, I don't know if we've got time for any Q&A.
You've answered eloquently and eruditely every question. But if there are a few, as we're packing away, I'm going to say thanks very much. If you want questions, please see Steve while we're madly packing away because of the staff. So I think we've got to say thanks to Steve for a brilliantly erudite